The alarm woke everyone on the space station at 3 in the morning. Captain Taeyang Park ran to the control room, still pulling on his jacket. The screens showed something falling from the sky toward the small moon below them. It was a ship, but not a human ship. It was spinning and smoking as it crashed into the rocky surface. "Get the rescue team ready," Taeyang ordered. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. In all his years as a station commander, he had never seen an alien ship before. No human had. They were alone in space, or so everyone thought. Dr. Hana Kim arrived at the control room 10 minutes later. She was the head scientist on the station, and she studied alien life. But until today, alien life meant small bacteria and simple plants from other worlds. Not ships, not intelligent beings. "We need to be careful," Hana said as she watched the crash site on the screen. "We don't know who they are or what they want." The rescue team put on their heavy suits and took weapons just in case. Dr. Jinho Choi went with them. He studied animal behavior, and Taeyang thought that might be useful. They flew down to the moon in a small shuttle and landed near the broken ship. The alien ship was torn open like a broken egg. Inside, they found 3 large creatures lying on the floor. They looked a bit like wolves from Earth, but bigger, much bigger. Their skin had scales that caught the light, and their closed eyes glowed faintly even in sleep. Sharp teeth showed between their lips. "They're alive," one of the rescue team said, checking a medical scanner. "Badly hurt, but alive." Then they heard it. A sound that made everyone freeze. It was high and sharp, like a scream mixed with a growl. It came from deeper inside the ship. Jinho moved his light toward the sound. In a small room at the back of the ship, 2 smaller creatures huddled together. They were cubs, children of the larger aliens. Their eyes glowed bright red in the darkness. When the light hit them, they opened their mouths wide, showing rows of sharp teeth. The sound they made was terrible, like nothing Jinho had ever heard. "Stay back," Jinho shouted. "They're dangerous." The team carefully moved the 3 adult aliens onto stretchers and carried them to the shuttle. But the cubs were a problem. Every time someone got close, they attacked. Their claws scratched at the walls. Their teeth snapped at the air. They seemed wild and violent. Finally, they used sleep gas to knock out the cubs and carried them to the shuttle in a locked metal box. Everyone was quiet on the flight back to the station. They had found aliens, but were they friendly? The adults were unconscious and might die. The cubs seemed like monsters. Back on the station, Hana made a quick decision. The adult aliens went to the medical bay. The cubs went to a special observation room with thick glass walls and metal bars. The room was strong enough to hold them safely while the scientists figured out what to do. When the cubs woke up, they went crazy. They threw themselves at the glass. They clawed at the metal walls, leaving deep scratches. The sounds they made hurt people's ears. Their eyes glowed brighter and brighter, changing from red to orange to yellow. Jinho watched them through the glass, writing notes on his computer. "Look at their behavior," he said to Hana. "They're like Earth's most dangerous predators. Those teeth, those claws, that aggression. We can't let them out." Hana agreed. She tried to give them food, but they wouldn't eat. She tried to give them water, but they knocked the bowls over. They just kept screaming and attacking the walls. Days passed. The adult aliens stayed unconscious in the medical bay. The machines kept them alive, but the doctors didn't know if they would ever wake up. The cubs got worse. They stopped moving as much. They lay in the corner of their room, still growling when anyone came near. Military command sent messages from Earth. "If the adults die," one general said, "we may need to consider the cubs a threat. We can't risk keeping dangerous aliens on the station." Everyone knew what that meant. On the 5th day, something changed. A little girl named Sora Kang was exploring the station. She was 7 years old, and her mother worked in the engineering section. Sora wasn't supposed to be in this part of the station, but she was curious. She liked to explore. She found the observation room by accident. The door was open just a crack because a scientist had forgotten to lock it. Sora pushed it open and walked inside. The room was dark except for the light coming from the observation chamber. Through the glass, she saw the cubs. They were lying together in the corner, pressed against each other. Their eyes still glowed, but not bright and angry like before. Now the glow was soft and sad. They weren't scratching the walls. They were just lying there, shaking. Sora walked closer to the glass. The cubs' heads turned toward her. Their eyes met hers. And in that moment, Sora saw something all the adults had missed. These weren't monsters. They were children. Scared, hurt, lonely children who wanted their parents. The scratches on the walls weren't attacks. They were trying to dig through to the next room, where their parents were. The terrible sounds weren't violence. They were crying. The glowing eyes weren't dangerous. They were full of tears. Sora sat down on the floor right in front of the glass. She didn't feel scared at all. The cubs watched her. Slowly, very slowly. They crawled toward the glass. They pressed their faces against it, looking at her. "It's okay," Sora whispered. "I'm here. You're not alone." The cubs' eyes changed color. The sad blue became softer, warmer. They made a new sound, not a growl or a scream. It was almost like a purr or a whimper. They were talking to her in their own way. That was how Minji Lee found them. Minji was a psychologist who worked with children on the station. She had been looking for Sora everywhere. When she opened the observation room door, she expected to scream, to run, to pull Sora away. But she stopped. She saw the cubs pressed against the glass, calm and quiet. She saw Sora sitting peacefully, talking softly to them. And she understood. These creatures weren't what everyone thought. Minji slowly walked over and sat down next to Sora. The cubs watched her but didn't move away. They stayed at the glass, their eyes now a gentle green color. "They're scared," Sora said simply. "They miss their mom and dad?" Minji nodded slowly. She had studied trauma in children for years. She recognized all the signs. The aggression was fear. The refusal to eat was stress. The constant crying was separation anxiety. How had everyone missed it? How had trained scientists seen monsters instead of traumatized children? The answer was simple and terrible. They had been looking for threats instead of looking with understanding. They had let fear control their observations. A child had seen the truth because children don't see aliens or monsters. They just see other kids who need help. Minji took out her phone and called Hana. "You need to come to observation room 3, she said quietly. "And you need to see this with fresh eyes. We've made a terrible mistake." Hana Kim arrived at the observation room 15 minutes later. She was ready to argue with Minji, ready to explain why the cubs were dangerous and needed to stay locked up. But when she walked through the door, all her words disappeared. Sora sat on the floor in front of the glass wall. She was drawing pictures with colored pencils on a piece of paper. The alien cubs sat on the other side of the glass, watching her. Their eyes glowed with a soft, warm light. They weren't making any terrible sounds. They weren't scratching at the walls. They just watched the little girl draw completely calm. "Look at their eyes," Minji whispered to Hana. The color changed when Sora came. Red means fear or anger. Blue means sadness. Green means calm. They have emotional expressions just like we do. But we didn't see it. We were too scared to look properly. Hana watched in silence. She had spent days studying these cubs through cameras and screens, writing down their aggressive behavior, marking them as dangerous. But now, seeing them like this, she felt sick. How could she have been so wrong? Sora held up her drawing to the glass. It was a picture of 2 small creatures and 2 big ones, all smiling. A family. One of the cubs reached out and touched the glass where the picture was. Its eyes turned a bright, happy yellow. "They understand," Sora said. "They know what the picture means. They want their family." Over the next few days, something amazing happened. Sora came back to visit the cubs every day after school. She would sit by the glass and talk to them, read them stories, and show them pictures. The cubs learned to recognize her. When she arrived, their eyes would light up with that happy yellow glow. But when Sora left, the cubs became sad again. Their eyes turned blue and they would press against the glass, watching the door where she had gone. They still wouldn't eat the food the scientist gave them. They still ignored the toys and objects placed in their room. Minji started watching all the old camera recordings of the cubs. She watched hours and hours of footage, this time looking for signs of emotion instead of signs of danger. What she found changed everything. The cubs had been trying to communicate from the beginning. When their eyes glowed bright red, they were afraid. When they scratched at the wall, they were always scratching at the same spot on the wall closest to the medical bay. They were trying to reach their parents. The terrible screaming sounds happened most often at night, the same time human children often cried for their parents. They're not violent, Minji explained to Hana and Captain Taiyang in a meeting. They're traumatized. Imagine being a child, surviving a terrible crash and waking up in a strange place. Your parents are gone. Strange creatures are staring at you. You're locked in a room. You can't communicate. You don't understand what's happening. How would you react? Taiyang rubbed his face. The military wants answers. They want to know if these aliens are a threat. If the adults don't wake up soon, they want the cubs removed from the station. Removed? Hana felt cold. You mean killed? I mean removed, Taiyang said firmly. But I don't want that. We need to show the military that these cubs aren't dangerous. We need proof. Minji had an idea. It was risky, but it might work. Let Sora go inside the room with them. If they're really just scared children, they won't hurt her. They'll respond to her kindness. Absolutely not, Hana said immediately. We can't risk a child's life. We're risking the cubs' lives right now, Minji argued. They're children too, and I believe they won't hurt Sora. I've watched them together for days. They're gentle with her. They respond to her. She's the only one who has been able to reach them. The argument went on for hours. Finally, they agreed to a test. Sora would enter the room, but she would wear a protective suit. Armed guards would be ready outside. At the first sign of danger, they would pull her out. When Sora's mother heard about the plan, she was angry and scared. But Sora begged her to agree. They need me, Mom, the little girl said. They're scared and alone. I can help them. The next morning, Sora put on the protective suit. It was too big for her, and she looked tiny inside it. But she wasn't afraid. She walked to the door of the observation room while everyone watched on cameras from outside. The cubs were lying in their usual corner. They looked weak. One of them had stopped moving much at all. It had been 9 days since the crash, and they still hadn't eaten anything. The doctor said they were slowly dying. The door opened. Sora stepped inside. The cubs' heads lifted. Their eyes, which had been dim and gray, suddenly flashed with color. Yellow surprise, then green relief, then blue sadness all at once. The weaker cub tried to stand up but fell. It made a small, sad sound. Sora walked toward them slowly, talking in a soft voice. It's okay. I'm here. You're going to be okay. Outside the room, guards held their weapons ready. Hana held her breath. Taiyang watched the screen so closely he forgot to blink. The weaker cub crawled toward Sora, moving slowly across the floor. When it reached her, it didn't bite or scratch. It just collapsed at her feet and closed its eyes. Its breathing was shallow and weak. Sora knelt down. She took off one of her protective gloves. No. Hana shouted from outside, but it was too late. Sora's bare hand touched the cub's head. The cub's scales were warm and soft, not rough like they looked. The cub made a sound like a sigh. Its eyes opened slightly, glowing a gentle blue. It was the color of trust. Sora looked at the water bowl nearby. She picked it up and held it near the cub's mouth. Please drink, she whispered. You need to drink. The cub's tongue came out just a little. It licked the water. Then it drank, small sips at first, then more. It was the first time either cub had accepted anything from the humans. The second cub, seeing its sibling drink, came closer. It was stronger and more cautious. It watched Sora carefully with bright green eyes. Then it bent down and drank from the bowl too. Sora sat down on the floor between them. Both cubs moved closer to her. They pressed against her sides, one on each side. Their eyes changed to a warm golden color. They made soft sounds, almost like purring. After a moment, they closed their eyes. For the first time since the crash, the alien cubs relaxed. Their breathing became slow and steady. They were sleeping, really sleeping, not just lying there exhausted and afraid. And they were using Sora as a pillow, trusting her completely. Outside the room, there was complete silence. Everyone stared at the screens in amazement. These creatures that they had called monsters were cuddled up to a human child like puppies. Jinho stood next to Hana, tears running down his face. I was wrong, he said quietly. I was so wrong about them. I let fear make me blind. Hana put her hand on his shoulder. We all were. But we can do better now. We can see them for what they really are. Sora sat with the cubs for 2 hours. She talked to them, stroked their scales, and let them sleep. When she finally had to leave, both cubs followed her to the door. They pressed against the glass as she walked away, their eyes turning sad blue again. But something had changed. That night, when the scientists brought food, the cubs ate. Not much, but enough. They drank water. They stopped scratching at the walls. They still cried for their parents, but the terrible, desperate sounds were gone. They had hope now. They had a friend. Captain Taeyang sent a report to the military with video footage of everything that happened. "These aliens are not a threat," he wrote. "They are intelligent, emotional beings who respond to kindness. The cubs are children who needed comfort, not creatures who needed to be destroyed. The response from Earth would take days to arrive. Until then, they would wait. But at least now, everyone on the station saw the cubs differently. They weren't looking at monsters anymore. They were looking at children who were far from home, waiting for their parents to wake up." 3 days after Sora first entered the room with the cubs, Hana published her new report. In it, she admitted her mistakes. She wrote about how fear had clouded her judgment and made her see danger where there was only distress. The report spread quickly through the scientific community on Earth. Some people praised her honesty. Others criticized her for changing her opinion so fast. But the harshest criticism came from the military. A general sent a message to Captain Taeyang, and it was not friendly. "You allowed a civilian child to enter a containment area with unknown alien life forms. This is unacceptable. You put that child's life at risk. If anything had gone wrong, you would have been responsible." Taeyang read the message in his office with Hana sitting across from him. "They want to remove me as commander," he said quietly. "They're talking about a court-martial." "That's not fair," Hana said. "You made the right choice. Those cubs would have died without Sora's help. They were starving themselves." "The military doesn't see it that way," Taeyang replied. "They see a commander who broke protocol and put a child in danger." Meanwhile, Sora continued to visit the cubs every day. She named them Roku and Nabi. Roku meant 6 in Korean because the cubs had 6 legs. Nabi meant butterfly because their scales shimmered with colors like butterfly wings when the light hit them right. The cubs learned to recognize their names. When Sora said Roku, the larger cub would look up. When she said Nabi, the smaller one would come closer. They were learning. They were smart. Minji watched these interactions with great interest. She started to understand their eye colors better. Red was fear or anger. Blue was sadness or loneliness. Green was calm or content. Yellow was joy or excitement. Orange seemed to be curiosity. Purple, which appeared rarely, seemed to be confusion. But the cubs also made sounds. Different sounds for different things. A low rumble meant they were happy. A high chirp meant they wanted attention. A whimper meant they were sad. A sharp bark meant something scared them. They had a language, and slowly the humans were learning it. Jinho spent hours watching videos of the cubs and taking notes. He was building a guide to their communication. "Look at this," he showed Hana one day, pointing at the screen. "When Nabi wants to play, she lowers her front body and keeps her back end up. It's exactly like how Earth dogs play, and when Roku is worried, his ears fold back flat against his head. These aren't random movements. They're communicating clearly." As the cubs grew healthier and stronger, they became more active. They played with each other, chasing and tumbling. They played gentle games with Sora when she visited. They never used their claws or teeth to hurt. They knew how to be careful with the small human. Other children on the station heard about Sora's friendship with the alien cubs. They wanted to visit too. At first, Hana said no. It was too risky. But Minji had a different idea. "Children understand children," Minji explained. "Whether they're human or alien. If we want to really understand these cubs, we should let more children interact with them. With supervision, of course." After much discussion, they agreed to try. 3 other children, all around Sora's age, were allowed to visit the cubs. At first, the cubs were nervous. Their eyes turned orange with curiosity and a little bit of purple confusion. But when Sora introduced her friends, the cubs relaxed. If Sora trusted these humans, they would trust them too. The children played together, and it was amazing to watch. They played simple games like tag and hide and seek. The cubs were fast and good at hiding. The children laughed, and the cubs made their happy rumbling sounds. Language didn't matter. Rules were easy to figure out. Fun was universal. But the adult aliens still had not woken up. 12 days had passed since the crash. The doctors were worried. The aliens' bodies were healing, but their minds stayed asleep. It was like they were in a very deep coma. Then, on the 13th day, something changed. Roku and Nabi suddenly became restless. They paced around their room, eyes flashing between colors rapidly. They made sounds the humans had never heard before, high and urgent. "Something's wrong," Minji said, watching them on the screen. "They're upset about something." At the same time, in the medical bay, alarms started ringing. The adult aliens' vital signs were changing. Their brain activity was increasing. They were waking up. The cubs know, Hana realized. They know their parents are waking up. They can sense it somehow. In the medical bay, the 3 adult aliens opened their eyes. For a moment they lay still, confused and disoriented. Then they saw the humans around them. They saw the medical equipment. They saw the metal walls. The largest alien, a female, made a sound that shook the walls. It was loud and deep and terrifying. She tried to stand up, pulling at the medical tubes attached to her. The other 2 aliens, both males, did the same. "Get security," someone shouted. "They're going to attack." The female alien's eyes glowed bright red. She looked around frantically, making urgent sounds. The human doctors backed away, afraid. Armed guards ran into the room. But Hana understood. "She's looking for the cubs," Hana said. "She's a mother looking for her children. She thinks we've hurt them. We need to show her the cubs are safe," Minji said. "Otherwise, she'll think the worst." "No," Taeyang said firmly. "It's too dangerous. We don't know what they'll do." But Sora was already running. She heard the commotion and knew what was happening. She ran to the observation room where Roku and Nabi were throwing themselves at the door, trying desperately to get out. "Sora, no," her mother shouted, chasing after her. But Sora was fast. Sora opened the door to the observation room. Roku and Nabi burst out, running down the corridor toward the medical bay. Sora ran after them. Adults shouted and tried to stop them, but the cubs were too fast. The cubs burst into the medical bay. The guards raised their weapons. The adult aliens tensed, ready to fight. Everything happened in slow motion. Then Roku and Nabi made sounds, high and joyful. They ran straight to the female alien. Their eyes glowed golden with happiness. The female alien's eyes changed instantly from angry red to surprised yellow to relieved green. She made a deep rumbling sound and lowered her head. The cubs climbed onto her, chirping and purring. They pressed their faces against hers. The 2 male aliens moved closer, and all 5 of them huddled together. The sounds they made were soft and gentle, a family reuniting after trauma. Sora walked into the room slowly. Every gun was still pointed at the aliens. The female alien saw Sora. Her eyes changed colors rapidly. Purple confusion, orange curiosity, then something new. A pale pink color no one had seen before. The female alien lowered herself to the ground and crawled toward Sora. The guards tensed. "Don't shoot," Hana commanded. "Wait." The alien reached Sora and pressed her large head against the child's chest. Her eyes were that soft pink color, and she made a low, gentle sound. Roku and Nabi came over and stood next to Sora, their eyes also pink. Minji gasped. "Pink," she whispered. "It's gratitude. She's thanking Sora for taking care of her children." The female alien stood up slowly and looked at all the humans in the room. Her eyes cycled through colors, finally settling on green. Calm, peaceful. She made a series of sounds, different tones and rhythms. It was clearly language, clearly communication, even if the humans couldn't understand the words yet. One of the male aliens moved to a computer terminal on the wall. He touched it with one claw carefully. Lights blinked on the screen. He was trying to communicate. These aliens had technology. They had language. They had families and emotions. They were people, not monsters. The guards slowly lowered their weapons. Taeyang walked forward carefully, his hands open and empty. The female alien watched him. He stopped a few feet away and bowed his head, a gesture of respect. The alien bowed her head back. First contact was not what anyone expected. It was not formal or planned. It happened in a medical bay with a scared family and a brave child. But maybe, Hana thought, that was exactly how it should. The alien working at the computer terminal finally got it to respond. Images appeared on the screen. They were pictures, simple drawings that both humans and aliens could understand. The male alien pointed at a picture of a ship, then pointed at himself and his family. Then he showed a picture of an explosion and made a pained sound. They're trying to explain what happened, Jinho said, watching carefully. Their ship had an accident. The alien showed more pictures. A map of stars. A route marked in bright colors. Then a picture of the ship breaking apart. The alien touched his chest, then pointed to the female and the cubs. Family. They were a family traveling together when disaster struck. Over the next few days, communication slowly improved. The station's computers analyzed the aliens' language. The aliens learned some human words. Simple words like yes, no, food, water, safe, and most importantly, friend. The female alien, whom the humans learned to call Kara through the translation system, was the mother of the cubs. The two males were her mate Tovan and her brother Rask. They had been on a scientific mission studying planets when their ship's engine failed. They tried to land safely but crashed instead. When Kara woke up and couldn't find her cubs, she thought the worst. She thought these strange creatures had hurt them. But then she saw Roku and Nabi, healthy and happy. She saw how they trusted the small human child. She understood that her cubs had been cared for, protected, even loved. Through the translation system, Kara asked to speak with Sora. The little girl sat in a chair while the large alien knelt in front of her. Kara's eyes glowed that soft pink color again as she spoke through the computer's speakers. "You saved my children," the computer translated in a flat, mechanical voice. "I was afraid. When I woke without them, I thought I had lost everything. But you kept them alive. You gave them hope." "How can I thank you?" Sora smiled. "They're my friends. Friends help each other." Kara made a sound that the computer couldn't translate, but it sounded gentle and warm. "Friend?" she repeated in the human word, her voice strange but clear. "Yes, friend." As the aliens recovered and learned more about the station, something wonderful began to happen. The other children on the station were no longer afraid. They had seen Sora playing with Roku and Nabi. They had seen the adult aliens being gentle and kind. They wanted to meet the aliens too. With permission from both the human parents and the alien parents, supervised meetings were arranged. Children and cubs played together in a large common room. The children taught the cubs human games. The cubs taught the children their own games, which involved a lot of jumping and gentle wrestling. The adults watched in amazement. Human children and alien cubs didn't see each other as different species. They just saw other kids to play with. They created mixed games combining rules from both cultures. They laughed together, even though their laughter sounded different. One day, a boy named Minho tried to teach Roku how to draw. Roku couldn't hold a pencil in his claws, so Minho tied it to his paw with string. Roku's first drawing was messy and wobbly, but he was so proud. His eyes glowed bright yellow with joy. Nabi wanted to try too, and soon both cubs were creating colorful scribbles on paper while the children cheered. Minji documented everything. She made detailed notes about how quickly the children and cubs bonded. She recorded their games, their communication, their friendship. This information was precious. It showed that different species could live together peacefully, could understand each other, could become friends. Jinho published a paper titled Universal Language of Play: How Children Break Barriers, Adults Cannot. In it, he explained that children don't have the fear and prejudice that adults develop. Children are naturally curious and accepting. They look for similarities, not differences. They offer friendship first and ask questions later. The paper spread quickly through human space. Scientists were amazed. Military leaders were impressed. Politicians saw opportunity. Everyone was talking about the aliens on Harmony Station and the children who befriended them first. But the most important conversation was happening between Kara and Hana. Through the translation system, they talked for hours. They were both mothers. They both understood the fear of losing a child. They both knew the relief of seeing their children safe and happy. Kara explained that her people were called the Velkin. They came from a planet far away, in a part of space humans had not yet explored. The Velkin had been traveling the stars for many generations. They were scientists and explorers learning about the universe. "We have met many species," Kara said through the translator. "Some were friendly, some were not. We learned to be careful. But we never expected to find people like you. People who would care for our children as if they were their own." Hana asked about the Velkin's history. Kara shared something surprising. Long ago, the Velkin had almost destroyed themselves in terrible wars. Different groups of Velkin fought each other because they looked slightly different or believed different things. The wars lasted for generations and nearly ended their entire species. We survived, Kara explained, because our children saved us. The young ones refused to fight. They did not understand why differences mattered so much. They taught us to see past appearances and find common ground. Our children rebuilt our world with understanding instead of hate. This story made Hana think. Humans had their own history of wars and conflicts. Humans had fought each other over differences, too. Maybe all intelligent species went through this. Maybe the ability to overcome it, to learn from children, was what separated successful species from extinct ones. A message came from the Velkin homeworld. They had been searching for Kara's ship. When they received the distress signal from the crash site, they prepared for the worst. A rescue fleet was already on its way, along with military ships in case the situation was hostile. But now, learning that humans had saved and cared for the Velkin family, the military escort was called off. Instead, diplomats were coming. This would be official first contact between humans and the Velkin. And it would happen on Harmony Station because of what happened here. Captain Taeyang received new orders from Earth. Instead of a court-martial for breaking protocol, he was promoted. He was named the official ambassador for first contact with the Velkin. His willingness to take risks, to trust his crew's judgment, to put compassion before procedure, these were exactly the qualities needed for this historic moment. Preparations began for the Velkin diplomatic ship's arrival, but even as adults planned formal ceremonies and official protocols, the real diplomacy was already happening. It was happening in the common room, where human children and Velkin cubs played together. It was happening in the laughter and joy that needed no translation. One evening, as the artificial sun set on the station, Sora sat with Roku and Nabi in the observation deck. They looked out at the stars together. Kara sat nearby with Sora's mother, both mothers watching their children. "Do you think we'll always be friends?" Sora asked the cubs. Roku and Nabi pressed close to her, their eyes glowing golden. They didn't understand all her words yet, but they understood friends. They made their happy rumbling sounds. Kara spoke, and the translator on her collar turned her words into human language. In our culture, there is a saying, "Children see with clear eyes what adults overlook." Your daughter has clear eyes. She saw my children when others saw only danger. Yes, they will always be friends. And because of them, our people will be friends too. Sora's mother smiled, tears in her eyes. She had been so scared when Sora first went into the room with the cubs. She thought she might lose her daughter. But Sora had been right all along. She saw what the adults couldn't see. She understood what the scientists missed. Sometimes the wisest among us are the smallest. The stars shone bright outside the window. Somewhere out there, ships were coming. Ships carrying more Velkin, coming to meet humanity for the first time. But they weren't coming to war or to threaten. They were coming in peace because a little girl showed kindness to two scared children. Because in the end, children everywhere speak the same language. The language of friendship, trust, and love. The Velkin diplomatic ship arrived 3 weeks later. It was huge, much bigger than any human ship, but it didn't come with weapons ready. It came with its lights on, broadcasting peaceful greetings in multiple languages. They had been learning human languages during their journey. Captain Taeyang, now officially Ambassador Taeyang, stood in the docking bay with his team. He wore his formal uniform, but he felt nervous. This was the most important moment in human history. First official contact with an alien species. Everything had to go right, but Sora had a different idea. She stood near the front of the group with Roku and Nabi beside her. Kara had agreed to this. She said the Velkin way was to let children lead when possible. Children reminded adults why peace mattered. The airlock opened. The Velkin delegation walked through. There were 5 of them, all adults, all wearing devices that would translate their words. The leader was an old Velkin with gray scales and wise dark eyes. His name was Elder Vorn, and he was one of the most respected Velkin in their society. Elder Vorn looked at the humans gathered before him. His eyes cycled through colors, reading the room. Then he saw Kara and her family. His eyes turned bright yellow with joy. He made sounds of greeting, and Kara responded. They were speaking in their native language, too fast and complex for the translators to keep up. Finally, Elder Vorn turned to face the humans. He bowed his head low, a gesture of deep respect. When he spoke, his translator device turned his words into human language with only a small delay. "People of Earth," he said, his voice deep and strong. "We came here with many questions. We did not know what to expect. We did not know if our family had been captured or rescued. We did not know if we would find friends or enemies." He paused and looked directly at Sora. "But Kara has told me everything. She told me about the small human who saw past fear. She told me about the children who played with her cubs. She told me about scientists who admitted their mistakes and changed their minds. She told me about a commander who broke rules to do what was right." Elder Vorn walked forward slowly until he stood in front of Sora. He lowered himself to the ground so his eyes were level with hers. "You saved more than 2 cubs," he said softly. "You saved the future. You showed us that humans are people we can trust, people we can learn from." Sora smiled at him. "I just wanted to help," she said simply. "They were scared and sad. I knew how that felt." Elder Vorn's eyes turned that soft pink color. "Gratitude. Simple wisdom," he said. "The kind that adults often forget. We have much to learn from humans, I think." The formal ceremony began. Speeches were made. Taiyang spoke about humanity's hope for peaceful cooperation. Elder Vorn spoke about the Velkin's excitement to meet a new species. Documents were signed, officially establishing diplomatic relations between Earth and the Velkin homeworld. But the most meaningful moment came after all the formal parts were done. Elder Vorn asked a question that had been puzzling him since he arrived. "My people took generations to overcome our fear of others," he said. "We nearly destroyed ourselves because we could not see past our differences. Yet you humans saw past the differences in mere days. How? What is your secret?" The room was silent. Everyone looked at Hana. She was the lead scientist. She should answer. Hana stood up and thought carefully about her words. "We almost didn't," she said honestly. "At first we saw monsters. We saw threats. We were trapped by our own fear. But humans have something that saved us. We raise our children together, in communities. Our children learn empathy and cooperation from a very young age. They learn to see similarities before differences." She looked at Sora and smiled. "Where we saw danger, a child saw another child in need. Our children don't have years of fear and prejudice built up. They look at the world with fresh eyes and open hearts. That's humanity's greatest strength. Not our technology or weapons, but our children's natural ability to build bridges instead of walls." Elder Vorn was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a sound that the translator struggled with before finally settling on "fascinating." He turned to the other Velkin diplomats and spoke rapidly in his own language. They responded with equal excitement. "This explains much," Elder Vorn said, turning back to the humans. "We have met 43 different intelligent species in our travels. Most raise their young in isolation or small family groups. They do not have this communal learning. Human children grow up seeing diversity as normal. They learn to cooperate with many different people from birth." He paused, his eyes glowing with that thoughtful orange color. "In all our travels, we have never met a species like yours. A species where children naturally seek friendship across all boundaries. This is remarkable. This is special. This is why humans will be important in the galaxy." The humans looked at each other in surprise. They had always thought their strength was in their science or their determination, but the Velkin saw something different. They saw humanity's social evolution as unique and valuable. Over the next few months, Harmony Station was transformed. It became the first multi-species station in known space. Velkin families came to live and work alongside humans. More importantly, Velkin cubs and human children became classmates and friends. A new school was built for the children. Human teachers and Velkin teachers worked together. The children learned both languages. They learned about both cultures. They played together, studied together, and grew together. They were the first generation to grow up knowing that life existed beyond their own planet. Sora and the cubs Roku and Nabi became famous across human and Velkin space. Their friendship was shown in videos that traveled to both homeworlds. They became symbols of what was possible when people chose understanding over fear. Minji published her groundbreaking research. Her paper, Why Children Succeed Where Adults Fail, The Role of Youth in Cross-Species Relations, changed everything. It became required reading for anyone involved in space exploration or first contact situations. Her work showed that including children in diplomatic efforts in careful and safe ways led to better understanding and faster trust-building. Jinho, who had once called the cubs monsters, now led the most important research department on the station. He studied how different species communicated and learned. He opened every lecture and paper with the same words: "Never underestimate what we can learn from our children." 6 months after first contact, a celebration was held in the station's new multi-species garden. It was a beautiful place with plants from both Earth and the Velkin homeworld. Human and Velkin families gathered together, sharing food and stories. Children played in the garden, their laughter mixing with the chirps and rumbles of the cubs. A new Velkin family had just arrived, and their cubs were nervous. Their eyes glowed dim and worried as they clung to their parents. Sora noticed. She walked over with Roku and Nabi following her. The nervous cubs watched them approach. Sora smiled and held out her hand. "Want to play?" she asked. The new cubs looked at their parents. The Velkin mother nodded. Slowly, the cubs stepped forward. Roku and Nabi made welcoming sounds, their eyes bright and friendly. Within minutes, all the cubs were playing together, human children joining in. The nervous cubs' eyes turned from worried gray to happy yellow. Elder Vorn, who had stayed on the station as the primary Velkin ambassador, sat on a bench with Hana. They watched the children play together. The old Velkin's eyes glowed with that soft pink gratitude again. "Your species has a saying, yes?" Elder Vorn asked. "That children are the future?" "We do," Hana replied. "We have a similar saying," Elder Vorn said. "We say children are the present that builds the future. Watching them now, I understand both our peoples mean the same thing." Hana watched Sora leading a game that involved both running and gentle wrestling, perfectly adapted for both human children and Velkin cubs. "They make it look so easy," she said softly. "Because for them it is," Elder Vorn replied. "They do not see aliens and humans. They see friends and potential friends. They do not worry about differences. They celebrate them." He paused, watching the children chase each other through the garden. "Your children have given the galaxy a gift. They have given us hope." As the artificial sun set on the garden, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the children continued to play. Their voices and sounds blended together into something beautiful, something universal. The sound of joy, of friendship, of a future where species that once seemed impossibly different could live together in peace. Taeyang stood with a group of human and Velkin adults, all of them watching the children. "We were so afraid," he said quietly. "We almost made terrible mistakes because we let fear guide us instead of compassion." Kara stood beside him, her cubs now playing happily with their friends. "Fear is natural," she said through her translator. "But so is kindness. Your people chose kindness. You chose to trust. That took courage." "No," Taeyang said, shaking his head. He pointed to Sora. "She had the courage. We just had the wisdom to follow a child's example." In the garden, Sora sat under a tree with Roku and Nabi on either side of her. Other children and cubs joined them, forming a circle. Someone started singing a human song. The Velkin cubs hummed along in their own way, creating harmony. More voices joined, human and Velkin, different but together. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not superior weapons or